The Israel War Cabinet is said to be in agreement that a response is required to the Iran attack, although members remain divided over a time frame. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden has warned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. will not take part in a counteroffensive against Iran, an option Netanyahu's war cabinet favors after a mass drone and missile attack on Israeli territory over the weekend. Now, according to analysts, the threat opens warfare erupting between the arch Middle East foes and dragging in the United States put the region on edge, triggering calls for restraint from global powers and Arab nations. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres told a Security Council that the Middle East is on the brink as the people of the region are confronting a real danger of a devastating full-scale conflict. He called on those responsible to defuse and de-escalate the situation. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined by former Israel Defense Forces security personnel, Sarit Zehavi. Hello, Sarit. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So what are your insights on the recent escalation between Israel and Iran, and how do you perceive this impacting peace and security in the Middle East?
Peace and security never seem far away than today. I'm sorry to say, but what happened in the past few days just proved the Iranian plan in advance, which is creating a situation of unification of fronts against Israel and Western presence in the region. Iran had used its proxies to create a multi-front attack against Israel with drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles. The good news is that it seems like not only the countries in the region, like Jordan and Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries, but also Western countries like Britain and France and United States understood the threat we are facing and were willing to help us defend ourselves, which is definitely not obvious and very, very important with regard to the message that is being sent to Iran itself. Iran posed a global threat. We were all united to defend the state of Israel against this threat, but defense is not a strategy to solve the problem and to bring peace and security, because as we speak, we are still under attack in the northern front here. I can say that I live up north. My Alma Center that I established is based 12 kilometers from the Lebanese border. And we had around more than 1,400 attacks since October 8th, since the Northern Front was open against the state of Israel. And that's why there was the killing in Damascus of the Iranian general a few weeks ago. He was the commander of the Northern Front here. Okay. I think that it's very important that globally, Iran will also see an offensive effort against it, meaning that the world will send a clear message that it cannot accept the ballistic missiles problem, it cannot accept the nuclear program, it cannot accept the cultivation of proxy militias in the Middle East that are actually collapsing the nearby states over here, whether it's Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. All of this should be terminated. And this is the opportunity to unite around this cause.
All right, Sarit, now you talked about, Israel being under attack on almost all fronts, and would actually love to know, as a former Israeli Defense Force security personnel, in your experience, how do you think regional dynamics and geopolitical interests play a role, especially in fueling conflicts in the Middle East, particularly between Israel and Iran?
Look, the Middle East changed deeply in the past decade. It's not the Middle East that we used to know, and it took us a while to understand that. Iran invested a lot of efforts in taking advantage of the civil wars in Syria and in Iraq, and also of the very fragile situation in Lebanon, to establish proxy militias that are posing a threat to the state of Israel. Hezbollah in Lebanon is the most professional one, and it's actually trained all other militias, and also Yemen, which I almost forgot. And today what we see is that these proxy militias have capabilities that we couldn't imagine a decade ago. If this will not be stopped, these proxy militias will pose a threat to us, which is very similar to what we've seen in the past weekend, but except they are closer. And the closer you get to the borders of Israel, the easier for you is to avoid the aerial defense systems. And that's why when missiles are launched from Lebanon or UAVs are launched from Lebanon, the percentage of success with intercepting is different. It's not 99% like what we experienced in the past weekend. All relationships here are changing. And as I've said, I think that the good news around everything that is happening is that the Sunni countries in the region, which is Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, and Arab Gulf, all of them today are willing to strengthen their relationship with Israel and most of them participated actively in this defense activity that we were witnessed in the past weekend. This proves that if we want to, we can work together, Israelis and Arabs, against a threat over here in the Middle East, of course, with the mediation and assistance of the United States and others.
All right, Sarit, you talked about working together, that's Israeli and Arabs. You also talked about, proxy militias, having capabilities that you didn't even know about and, the need to actually stop them. But what measures do you believe could be taken to, stop them and to mitigate the risks of any further escalation?
Look, I think that what Israelis learned from October 7th is that we cannot continue to believe that our enemies are deterred while they are building their capabilities to the next war. If a player here is deterred or interested in having peace and security for its people, it is not investing in offensive capabilities, it is investing more in defensive. And it is not talking day and night on the termination of the state of Israel, which this is what is being done by Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others. I can tell you that the chance of death to Israel, death to America, a curse upon the Jews, we hear them from Sana'a to Beirut and to South Lebanon, to Iraq and to Damascus. These chants are being heard by the proxy militias of Iran all over the Middle East, and this should be changed. Now, if you talk about how should we change that, of course, it should be a combination of a diplomatic effort with military activity. If we only take diplomatic effort, been there, done that. 17 years ago, we had Resolution 1701 with regard to Lebanon, which was supposed to create a new order over here next to the Lebanese-Israeli border, and it didn't happen. Hezbollah never had any intention to respect this resolution. So it should be a combination on both. These proxy militias don't truly care about their own people. They cherish death and they culture the culture of death, and that's why it's so difficult to those who cherish life to create deterrence or to actually diplomatically solve the problem. But a combination of both could be very effective if it's sanctions, if it's UN Security Council resolution, and if it's military activity that is combined not only by the Israelis, especially when we speak about the possibility of nuclear program of Iran. This shouldn't be held only by Israel. The threat is a global threat.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarit Zehavi, for joining me and speaking on this.
Thank you for having me.